Hello everybody, apologies for the delay, I was having some technical difficulties. Tonight is a solo edition of the weekly Steelchair podcast. Tonight we pay tribute to Scott Hall, formerly Razor Ramon of pro wrestling. Tonight it's a difficult one. If you may know, obviously apologies for the delay, obviously I was having time constraints. But I will be dropping the link in the live chat, but I may as well make reference. Tonight's a difficult one. Tonight is very important. I can't disclose why, but it's purely for the sense that, well, if you really want to know, it's because the great man did pass away during the week, but obviously tonight we're not here to discuss about that, we're here to talk about his wrestling career. So I will disclose we will be running until just before 8 o'clock. And we will disclose the fact that this is about Scott Hall's career. Scott Hall, obviously, famous for the NWO, famous for creating the NWO. He was famous for the reincarnation of Sting into the Crow Sting, the 1994 ladder match at Wrestlemania 10, the 95 SummerSlam versus Shawn Michaels. He literally gave him a career. Without Scott Hall, there is no Shawn Michaels. But obviously, get yourselves in the live chat, get amongst it. And if you want to be involved in the show tonight, just let me know and I'll drop the link. But first things first, we are going to divulge into just who is Scott Hall. Just who is Scott Hall? And that is really important. So we are just going to fire away, obviously, in his career. And we're just going to disclose key moments, I believe, that really testifies the man, which is my focal point. That's what I'm all about. So Scott Hall's debut, of course, was in 1984. The NWA, of course, was where he picked up the new National Wrestling Alliance, where he was picked up in Championship Wrestling. Key moment for him, of course, is who he teamed with. His hero was Dusty Rhodes. He would then later go on to team with Dusty Rhodes in 1998 in the NWO, in WCW. But the one important thing for him was the fact that in his early career, he had an early title shot against Mark Jannetty and Bulldog Bob Brown. That was NWA Central States Tag Team titles in 1985. He would then go from there into the AWA, where he wrestled as Magnum Scott Hall, and then he would then rename Big Scott Hall. Yeah, no, so bad. At the time, Vern Gagne, who was the owner and promoter of the AWA, he saw something in Scott Hall. He believed that he could be the next Hulk Hogan. The charisma, the brand, the presence, something of importance, something he believed that he could work with. And for that, truly sums up Scott. He had that in him. He would then go on to team with Curt Hennig, which obviously, if you're a big pro wrestling fan, you would know that is Mr. Perfect. That was towards the late, mid-80s, so your 1986, 1987, the real focal point for Scott Hall, and I believe that's where it really mattered. But I thought the best thing about his period in the AWA was his movement into the solo career. He would then, in terms of who he went up against, he had world title matches against Stan Hansen, Rick Martell. He was going to be given the world title, but that was later opposed because of Gagne's omission at the very end, and Scott Hall, who also cited he hated the weather. Now, if that speaks trouble, then I don't know what doesn't really. That speaks trouble. But do get your comments in the live chat, guys. If anybody wants to appear, just let me know. I will certainly answer any questions. But I'm not going to divulge into the WWF. He would actually appear at a house show in 1987. He would then appear again in 1990 before he had his first major stint in NWA's WCW before it would then branch out to themselves. But it's hard to really go into more about Scott Hall unless you realistically bring up this. So I'm just going to bring it up right now. 1 second. If it lets me. Yep. I think when you realistically look at Scott Hall's career, I think this is truly the best moment that I can remember. It's not actually letting me bring it up. I don't know why. But it was the image of him standing. It was the image of him standing in the background at WrestleMania 10 where he stands on the ladders and he's holding the unified Intercontinental titles that he had. I forget, obviously I mentioned that ladder match against Shawn Michaels. This was the focal point. It was just the greatness of it, that ladder match. The ladder match itself was significant for two things. Apologies for being on my phone there. I'm just tweeting out that we're live. The significance of that ladder match in 1994 is also relevant to Scott Hall back in 1990 as well, when he was working under Jim Ross in WCW. The ladder match was about propelling two stars to mainstream main event status. The first one obviously was Shawn Michaels, who would then be the main focal point of the WWE alongside Bret Hart in the 90s. The other was Scott Hall, who would then have his best work in WCW. Shawn Michaels, in that sense, would benefit from his size, speed, and agility. Scott Hall, power, charisma. And he would take that into his feuds with Diesel. He would then take it into his feuds with Bret Hart. He would take it with his feuds with... Unfortunately, he didn't get a feud with The Undertaker, but he did have mainstream level feuds with those two in particular, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. Diesel was one of impressive for me. The fact that Scott Hall proved that he could work with any big man and work with a big man really well, that was the best part. And it just signifies the relevance of having that versatility in your character, and that's something that I'm glad for. So we're just going to see if we can bring up anything further for him. 1 moment. Yeah. I did have an edit for you guys to bring up. It was a Scott Hall one, and it's just disappeared, but I've been able to add it back. The one I was telling you about. I'm just going to drop myself into a different view. 1 second. I'm going to remove myself from the screen just so I can show you what I'm talking about, from a minute ago. The real importance, and this is right here. 1 second. It's the mark of a good show. The mark of a good show was Scott Hall's true ambition. It was something he actually said in an interview. That was in 1992. Of course, it was when he started to win was starting when he went on to win more titles was actually the beginning of 91, but 92 he was asked about what his main objective was, and it was to promote good quality entertainment, entertain the fan base, and build individuals into mainstream stars. That was something that he quoted in an interview back in 92, which even I thought is something of significance, because not many would take that on. Obviously at the time you had like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage. They were more in it for themselves, where he was more in it for the fans, which is more significant in that regard. And that's something that should be held in more than anything else. That for me is why he's so underrated. He's so underrated. But of course, with that part to him, he's never going to go and get the respect he deserves as a mainstream talent that would win a world title. I think built around that time, the new generation, would Scott Hall have made a very good world champion? I don't think so, personally. And the reason I don't think he is because I don't think he had the overall brand to him. But what he could do was he could challenge the champion significantly. Like, for example, King of the Ring 93. He faced Bret Hart at King of the Ring. He also faced Bret Hart at the Royal Rumble in 1993, both for the world title. Both important, both great matches. But it showed that he may, even if he wasn't world champion, he could at least compete for the world title. And that significantly is what also worked in WCW. He didn't get the world title, but he won World War III. He won the World War III event in 96. And obviously he challenged Sting for the world title in 97's Uncensored. It was never about him doing the effort, World War III in 97, He won World War III in 97, He challenged him at 98's Uncensored. But that's what he did. It was never about... You could basically give him the world title, but you could make him compete for the world title. But the Razor Ramon characters where everybody remembers Scott Hall, I think, if you're more of a WWE fan in the 90s or WCW, it was more about Razor Ramon. His debut was back in 1992. Famous quotes of the bad guy, say hello to the bad guy. That's what I liked about him, is he was able to go and look at what was popular in the period before and then bring it to mainstream. His first angle, of course, was Ric Flair, Randy Savage. He would interfere in the world title match, attacking Savage, which would then include Ultimate Warrior, because obviously Ultimate Warrior was now returning. Don't really want to get into that, because obviously Ultimate Warrior would then be released after SummerSlam for events that shouldn't be discussed, frankly. But the most important thing for me is the fact that in that period of time, his first main angle, not only did he get attention from being recognised by Ric Flair in the ring, he was recognised very well by Macho Man Randy Savage, who would then give him the opportunity to go and take on Bret Hart for the world title. He would also go up against Savage and Warrior at Survivor Series. He teamed with Ric Flair there, which was a very great match. I honestly recommend it. But the good thing about that was the fact that Warrior had to pull out. Warrior pulled out, but Mr. Perfect got involved, and there was the Perfect versus Ramon aspect of the match that gave substance. I don't think going up against I don't think if you'd had Warrior in that match, it would never have taken it far. It would have ended badly. You had to give good technical ability, and that's where Mr. Perfect came along. That obviously led to the fact that maybe he could work better with smaller guys rather than big guys, and obviously that's why his best ever matches was against Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart from that period, because he had the quality in the ring to do it. One famous moment was in 1990. It was in 1993, which really is funny. You guys, anyone that's watching may remember him. It's the 1-2-3 Kid, who would then become X-Pac. At the time, the 1-2-3 Kid was jobbing. but in a surprise twist, they gave the win to the jobber. So Ramon at the time went over. And at that point, every single match, just to egg at him, they would chant 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it got to him that point where even in matches where the 1, 2, 3 kid was involved in, Scott Hall would come out at the time as Razor Ramon, and every time they'd be alerted by 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that for me is what Razor Ramon was all about. He put a jobber over for the aspect of another man's career. Like that says it all really about Scott Hall as an in-ring performer. It was never just about himself. It was about bringing in new generation of talent to then go up against. And obviously he would then team with the 1, 2, 3 kid who would then turn heel on him. Shockingly, in 1995, he would join DiBiase's $1 Million Corporation. But as we are discussing, I do have a guest live from the States. Hopefully, we'll see how this one goes. This should be very entertaining, although the fact he's wearing a hat backwards might determine that it's going to be an episode of Recess. But welcome, Connor. And obviously in the background, we do have Scott Hall's body. So enjoy that one, folks. But
it's magnificent. It's magnificent.
He is holding the two titles. I will put the manifest that is our stadium back on the background. But Connor, I wanted to get your aspect. What is your overall thoughts of Scott Hall's career? And if you had to describe him in a couple of words, how would you describe him?
Nicest bad guy you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest way to describe him. He's the nicest, like you were saying, he was from Razor Ramon to actually just becoming Scott Hall, the bad guy. He was always the bad guy. He was always, and it's funny because you get some of those times where you get bad guys and heels, like we see with the Fiend nowadays.
Yeah.
Where as much as they're a heel, they still get cheered.
Yeah.
They're still absolutely adored by the entire fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
one of the earliest representations of that is Scott Hall with Razor Ramon. Was always the bad guy and perceived as being this massive heel. And yet he continued to be absolutely loved and adored by the fans, by the entire fan base through all of his Razor Ramon days and even into the NWO. When the NWO, when you had, Kevin Nash and Hollywood Hulk Hogan being hated on for joining, and Shawn Michaels, X-Pac, all of them joined. All of them got a little bit of hate for it. Scott Hall, his kind of stance within the WWE and the WWF at the time fan base was never changed. He was always beloved, and I do think it's interesting that he was not only beloved by the fan base, he was absolutely adored by those backstage. You never really heard a bad word. He was never in court. You hear about all these they hold court backstage when somebody does something that they're not supposed to do. Wrestling court. Never in wrestling court. Never ever heard of him having any bad disputes with anybody backstage.
Yeah.
And like you said, was willing to do anything for the business if it meant the betterment of the business as a whole. Like you said, with putting over the 1, 2, 3 kid. And even letting him kind of get the crap beat out of him by the 1, 2, 3 kid when the 1, 2, 3 kid turned heel. So the easiest way to sum him up, he's just the nicest bad guy you'll ever meet. He was just an absolute gem. I don't think we'll ever see his kind of character again. Not only because we have transitioned into more of a PG era, but just how he was. I think the closest we'll actually come is the Fiend, to be honest. I think that's the closest we'll ever come. That's why I kind of brought him up as my comparison. It's just someone who never does anything wrong backstage and is adored both backstage and by the fan base, no matter how heel he is, no matter how he acts, anything. It was like Scott Hall could do no wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing that stands out is the only thing you could probably say negative about him was the curtain call.
Yeah,
it's probably the only negative, because obviously the likes of Michaels, Nash, Hall, Triple H, X-Pac, they all knew what was going to happen. Like, we all knew that Hall and Nash were going to WCW. which is fine, which is completely fine at the time because they done it as a siege. They done it as a siege view where they thought, oh, it's an invasion by the WWF on Nitro, which would later not be the case. That was just a scripted view by Bischoff to sell it to the crowd, the outsiders. But the only thing you could really say negative of him is that how it was perceived. Like at the time, he was top of his game, going to the rival company who at the time were ready to go and quote unquote kick WWE's ass, and it's no coincidence that they would never have went 83 weeks on the bounce, number one in the ratings, if it hadn't been for Scott Hall going. People say, maybe Kevin Nash or maybe it was Hulk Hogan. I think it was purely
Scott Hall.
I think it was purely down to Scott Hall and Eric Bischoff.
And yet you never see, and the thing is, like you said, that's the only time that you could say he did something wrong. But one, kayfabe had to be broken at some point. It was never going to last forever where kayfabe was always going to be, kayfabe was going to be broken at some point by someone.
Yeah.
And it just ended up being Scott Hall. And I can understand why they broke it. I mean, if you're that close with a group of people like they were incredibly, such a tight bond between those. You hear of people backstage that are in stables that are like, the Four Horsemen were an incredibly tight-knit group of people who loved each other to death and would run through a brick wall, for any of them. And I think that group was the same exact way. So it's completely understandable that they would show appreciation to each other with everything that's happening. But it shows, again, why Scott Hall was who he was and how he's, what his legend will go down as. That he was, even after he left, was still loved by the WWE fan base. And as soon as he stepped foot into WCW, was adored by that entire fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any, like, apart, obviously I've mentioned a few matches tonight. I've mentioned him versus Bret Hart twice, King of the Ring, the Royal Rumble. I've mentioned the two ladder matches, but is there any other Scott Hall matches like from his WWF era that stood out for you? Was there any that stood out?
For me, it's funny because there's some matches that stand out more than others, and not necessarily, going off of what brand he was in. For me, the one that I'll always remember, even though they say it is, but it's because, we know Vince McMahon, he doesn't like to admit when somebody else does something first. But it's the match against Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
Way back, which they called, the first ever for its type. I mean,
yeah,
it's an interesting thing when you get to be. I feel like it's always if I was a wrestler, I would be absolutely honored to be able to do something for the first time, even if it was just the first time in the company. Even if it's just the first time in the company. And I think there's one. There's actually one match that sticks out in my head that I don't know if you know of, just because it wasn't in WWE, it wasn't in WCW, it was actually in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, go on.
And it was Cowboy Bob Orton.
Yeah.
Dick Murdoch, Scott Hall against Antonio Inoki, Riki Koshu, and Kantaro Hishino. That, for me, again, it just kind of shows kind of who he was. That
absolutely.
He was able to basically just go really anywhere he wanted and immediately be going to the top of the brand. WWE, top of it. He was, one of the main guys. He goes to WCW and is immediately the main guy. Goes to New Japan Pro Wrestling and is immediately put in this big match with legends of WWE that are there and also the current legends of the NJWP at the time. He was kind of larger than life at some points when you really think about him. And it's kind of funny because he's not a big dude. Like when it comes to height, he wasn't like a tall giant. He's not, he's not someone like Undertaker who has a lot of his intimidating presence by his height, But he just had this air about him that you kind of just felt like you had to bow down.
No, I honestly agree with you.
Yeah,
I honestly agree with you.
He was a special. He's a special guy. Pure and plain and simple. If I got to do two words, he was just a special guy. Yeah, that's it.
Definitely. And obviously, I just want to welcome in Trevor, long-term viewer of the show, my man Trev. Yo, Chico, Razor Ramon. Good to see you, man.
Oh my God.
Obviously,
Have you seen some of the they put some compilations together of like him throughout the oh my gosh, dude, seeing the old
one of my favorite segments, funnily enough, does involve the words Chico and Razor Ramon. And obviously I tweeted it on my Twitter page. It's the Scott Hall segment when he rejoined WWE with Hogan and Nash. Fucking hell. It's when they rejoined in the 90s and 2002 at No Way Out. And it was afterwards where you see him interacting with The Rock. And it's the whole camera scene where they're getting a picture for Hogan's kid. And he just walks up to him and he's like, what'd you just say? Yo, Chico, Razor Ramon. And he just obviously it makes sense because obviously you've got a Latino, like Miami resident up against Hanoi, like resident from Miami. And you're like, why couldn't that not? Like, I know obviously Rock versus Hogan was the intended WrestleMania match, but I kind of think they got it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is controversial because it's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. I would have had go as crazy as this. I would have had Rock versus Hall, and I think you should have had Austin versus. I would have had Rock versus Hall, Hogan versus Steve Austin. Because if you think about it, as much as I love The Rock, the main focal point at that time was Steve Austin.
Yeah,
he was the bigger star. As much as it pains me to admit that, Steve Austin was bigger. It should have been big star versus big star, so it should have been Austin versus Hogan. But
yeah, I think they underutilized it at some point.
Anyway.
I think they underutilized it. And it's funny. So I looked up just to I wanted to check for myself what the general consensus is of Razor Ramon's matches, and they actually rated all of his matches to see like which one was his best ever match.
Mm-hmm. And
his best ever got a 9.4 was his WrestleMania 10 ladder match against Shawn Michaels. And I mean, if you watch, and of course it was during the time of him being Razor Ramon, not just regular Scott Hall, which I mean, he's never regular. But it's funny because if you look at that match, you can tell why he was so, because the dude, he was one of those guys who you put him in any situation, any match against any opponent in any stipulation, and he was going to deliver a good match. He did, and that was easily one of his best because, and it's interesting because, like we said, it was the first televised ladder match in WWE history.
Yeah,
and the dude took to it like a duck out of water. He took to it like a duck out of water.
It was also the first ever 5-star match in WWE as well. First ever recorded 5-star match.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It comes from two guys who will go down as two of the greatest to ever get in the squared circle. I think Shawn Michaels is, for me, top 5 when it comes to just gifted. Technically, he was one of the best top 5 for me to ever step in and have a match.
Yeah.
And one thing that, like, I love bringing up the Razor Ramon era because from the get-go, his promos were always top.
Yeah, he had such an appeal.
His charisma is just, you know, he you know, you were doing your WWE career mode, and you just could not, for some reason, get your promos to go well, just because you didn't have Razor Ramon. I swear, if you drop Razor Ramon and have him do a promo on anything at any time, he's going to drop a 10 out of 10 promo at every single
opportunity. That depends on who can drop a promo.
Yeah, but it's just, for me, I can't, like, I draw through, there's people that have been in the industry.
Yeah.
That you roll your mind back and you just try and find a flaw.
Do you know that to this day that match is still ranked in the top 5 of top WrestleMania matches from their list of top 24?
It should be in the top 5.
It's still ranked in the
top 5 all time. It should be top 5 of all time. Not even, I don't even care WrestleMania or not. Just at any match at any pay-per-view of all time, it's top 5 for me. And it's not because
I don't think you could. I don't think you could purely because of the sense that great matches have come since. But it's always a standard. It's always a standard bearer to stick with at least. It's always good to match against.
I mean, if you want to talk about leaving a standard about you know, when you're doing a new match like a ladder match, and your standard is we just dropped the first top 5, you know, first 5-star ever recorded, and the very first ladder match ever televised.
Trevor straight in on Mark, and Mark's not even here. Razor Ramon's stubble
Oh,
was even
no.
better than Mark. Gillette, the best a man can get. Biggs, brilliant. Billy, good to see you, my buddy. Billy, that ladder match started things like TLC. Without that match, you wouldn't have the Hardy Boys or Edge and Christian Dudley Boy matches. Yet you're spot on. You're spot on. There is one thing I do want to discuss. Obviously, in terms of overall success, this is literally what the man achieved. To anyone who wasn't aware.
All right, let's take a half hour because it's going to take a while.
Scott Hall's overall championships and accomplishments, right? So, one-time AWA Tag Team Champ, which I've already said tonight, along with Kurt Hennig. He won the coolest title ever, the Iron Man Heavy Metalweight Championship. That was in DDT Pro Wrestling. Match of the Year 94, Most Improved Wrestler 1992, Tag Team of the Year 97 with Kevin Nash, the Outsiders, rightfully so. Good evening, Andrew. Hope you're good. He was ranked in number 7 of top 500 singles in the PWI 500 in 94. So that's crazy. He went from Most Improved 2 years before to number 7. He was ranked number 72 in 2003. Number 40 and number 98 of top 100 tag teams in 2003. And that was both with Nash and Hennig. TNA tag titles with Nash and Young. That was the only thing he won in TNA, with over 2 stints. WCW, he was TV champion, United States champion twice, tag team champion 7 times. He won the World War III superbly. Then when he went to the World Wrestling Council, he was World Wrestling Council Caribbean champion. And then he was even more disgusting. He was World Wrestling Council Universal Heavyweight Champion one time. So clearly WWE clearly proved they do like to steal. In WWE, in terms of achievement, Class of 2020 Hall of Fame, rightfully so. He was then the Class of 2014. So he was Class of 2014 originally as Razor Ramon, then 2020 as himself with NWO. 4-time Intercontinental Champion, Match of the Year twice. So he got the most spectacular match with Shawn Michaels on 2 periods. He had it at SummerSlam and he had it at WrestleMania. Newsletter Writers Observer, Match of the Year. Best gimmick in 96. Most disgusting promotional tactic was the last thing they ever mentioned. This was Wrestling Observer. The most disgusting promotional tactic was exploiting his alcoholism in 1998. So they've got a few things over him. But before I go into anything further, because there's one thing I do want to ask. I just need to come at the comments because there's a few mad bastard comments. So we're going to go straight away for Andrew here. I remember buying the first issue PWI 500, by far my favorite issue. Yep, to this day it's still a fantastic issue in Puerto Rico. Evan Mental, rumor had it that Hurricane won the tag titles twice on his own. Rumor has it Hurricane's not even part of this show. Oh wait, that's not a rumor. Carlos Colon, yep, and he had severe alcoholism in 1998, same time that Sting was going through his own demons of substance abuse and alcoholism, and they didn't exploit Sting, but they exploited Scott Hall, and it got to the point where Scott Hall actually, after the Great American Bash when they lost the tag titles, he actually reportedly had checked into Alcoholics Awareness and all that. AA did all that, rehabbed a lot. He had so much craziness that it got to the point where he couldn't cope. And after it took him a couple of months, he was still being on shows as well. Yeah, WWE exploited it, I agree. TNA exploited it as well.
Everybody exploited it.
Yeah, but I think the worst was WCW. Because it was, the whole taser incident, Starrcade 98, when he used the taser on Goldberg to end the streak. They were actually considering using that on him. And this was just before he was out to check into rehab for the second time. They were tempted to use the taser on Scott Hall. And obviously, with a man with alcoholic issues, You really want to use a taser on somebody towards the heart? I don't think so.
Not the
Scripted or
greatest.
scripted or not, you just don't
Yeah.
do it. Without Scott Hall and Nash going to WCW, you would never have had Austin and McMahon.
I find it
Yes.
crazy, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. What shocks me is just the pure longevity of this dude for how bad his alcoholism is and how much he can, just the longevity of his career. I mean, okay, so his career started in NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
1984. 1984,
Yep.
yeah.
You want to know what his last match, his last recorded match that I can see on his page was? 2010.
Yeah.
2010.
Exactly. Yeah, when he won the tag titles.
Yeah. And then defended them.
He was good.
Yeah, and then he came back and had a couple. The thing is, too, up until last year, he was still doing stints in the WWE, appearing and still throwing hands.
Evan, I am so disappointed in you. I'm so disappointed. That is horrific. How can you even say that? Goldberg streak. I'm actually going to say this right. You know what? I'm actually going to end Goldberg streak right now. Goldberg streak was massively overrated.
Completely, and it should have never really happened. I get they were trying to put him over as this big, fearsome dude, but nah.
No, the reason the reason Goldberg's streak is overrated is because they were going from 120 wins to then the next week, he had 135. At one point, they went, Goldberg's wrestled 15 matches in a week. He's now at 135 wins. No, Goldberg's streak is so overrated, like him. Goldberg was great in terms of a draw. I'm not going to deny that. He was a great draw. Great for going up against the NWO at the time with Hogan's work. You really had to get a good draw in there because Sting was great, but Sting wasn't drawing it. But he really did not do anything of significance. Even when he won the US title, when he won the world title as well. The comments by William Regal sum up Goldberg. He just couldn't work a match. Bret Hart was lucky he didn't get killed. I know he got the stroke, and I know that's horrible, but the way that he was, Goldberg, whether you like him or not, he was so dangerous in the ring. Very dangerous in the ring. That's why, even though Scott Hall, I know he had his demons, I would rather have a drunk Scott Hall, and this is not taken out on him in any way because I know it's horrible, but I would rather have a drunk Scott Hall than a sober Bill Goldberg, because even a drunk Scott Hall would still wrestle a 30-minute match to perfection. And that's a testament to the man he is. He was that good. And that is spot on. He wrestled about 20 minutes. Yeah, he did. 173 wins, and they're all crap. They were just crap. Like, they promoted him too early. That's another thing they did. They promoted him from the power plant, as it was called back then, far too early because of Steve Austin.
He was terrible on the mic. He wasn't absolutely that great in the ring, especially early on.
I remember that match as well, Victory Road in 2010. And also, I will give this comment as well as a shout. The greatest wrestler of all time, in your opinion, of course, your entitled opinion, the one and only Iron Sheik. Yes, happy birthday, sir. Happy birthday. Well, belated birthday. I'm going to ask you one other question, and then I'll see how much of a spin you could put on it. If you could put Scott Hall's, even when he was called Razor Ramon, his time, and if you'd seen any of his NWA, AW, if you'd seen anything on YouTube, his run in WCW, I'm going to discard TNA. Personally, I'm going to discard TNA because his run was awful because he just wasn't in the game that good anymore. If you could put his top 5 matches or top 5 feuds in order, how would you do it? Say from a reverse order, so from 5 to 1.
What's up?
If you
Sorry,
could, I'm going to kill you.
I got momentarily distracted. My apologies.
If you could put in up, excluding his TNA run, what would you put as his top 5 matches from 5 to 1 in reverse order? So that includes like his AW, NWA days as well.
Oh shit! Okay, you're a bastard. Because you're putting me on the spot like this.
No,
And
I
there's
am a
too many
host.
5 is Ramon, is him as Razor Ramon against Bret Hart, Royal Rumble 93.
Care to confirm why you've put that as 5th? I want you to elaborate on each choice, by the way. I don't want you just to say, like, oh, this is number 5 because it's 5.
So it's 5 for me because, and honestly, it's a kind of a shitty excuse, but I just think I put it as 5 because I think there's 4 better matches in front of it.
Fair enough.
Even though I love it and I think it's an amazing, amazing match, I think there's 4 in front of it. Number 4, I'm going to go Diesel and Michaels against Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid. Action Zone back in 94. And for me, I put it there purely because I think that was just one of the best examples of just how good Scott Hall was at being in a tag team, even when it wasn't, someone he did it with forever. Like, you can just say, oh, any match he had where he tag teamed with Kevin Nash was always really good because they were such close friends and knew each other so well. For me, number 3, I'm going to go with Hall, Nash, and Hogan versus Luger, Sting, and Savage back in '96. That's a big. You're still on mute, by the way.
So I am.
That was.
Sorry. Luckily, I didn't say much. All I said was, not bad. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, that for me was a huge. I think that was a big definition. I mean, the picture. I'll forever have ingrained in my mind just the picture of Hall, Nash, and Hogan, their arms raised after just kind of outclassing completely that duo they faced. They were completely outclassed them. And then number 2, I'm going to go the very first Ramon versus Michaels match at SummerSlam in '95.
Oh, the first ladder match was '94.
They did, but I'm saying so they faced off in '95 in SummerSlam, and that was a really, really good match. And that for me was a really, and of course, number 1, because I think it's top 5 matches of all time, is of course their WrestleMania 10 match, which is technically the first ever televised. Because I can't put it any lower than 1, with it being my favorite match he ever did. Me thinking it's top 5 ever, any match ever.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's have a look into the live chat. Let's have a look, because I believe Andrew's been giving you a list to combat yours. So Andrews went number 5, 1-2-3 Kid versus Razor, which I alluded to earlier on. He's went number 4, Razor versus Shawn feud for the IC title. Number 3, Razor versus Bam Bam. Great mention. Number 2, Outsiders versus Luger and Sting. And he's went number 1, Hall and Hennig versus Garvin Regal NWA feud. Fantastic. Yep, Memphis did do ladder matches. Obviously, WWE tried to claim it. So did
everybody tried to claim it back then.
See, the first ever match though, like the first ever ladder match was in Canada. Like the first ladder matches were done in Canada. Like that's where it came from. Like purely in that sense. Like we tried to claim it over here. Not really. We were behind. We were so far behind in that sense. But ladder matches are just brilliant to do. But they're so hard to work in terms of technique.
I feel like that just kind of. I know we're going to go off topic with. I'm going to go off topic from Scott Hall real quick. Ladder matches were so hard to do, and I think that kind of shows just the ability of guys like the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, who kind of made that kind of the TLC match. It's kind of their baby. And the difficulty of matches like that, I feel like those 4, and I know it's going off to Scott Hall, those 4 get completely super underrated because of the fact he was terrible.
Sorry, Evan. I know you put Scott Steiner was the best Scott to wrestle. I'm going to tell you now, I honestly thought Scott Steiner was crap. without his brother.
Yeah,
Yep.
if he wasn't in
This is the one. This is it. Crawford versus Kamata.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this now, and I might get killed for this, but it depends on your perspective. For me personally, Scott Steiner was nothing without Rick. He couldn't do
If he
anything
wasn't in the
without
tag team,
Rick Steiner.
Scott wasn't great.
He was so crap as a world champion. Like,
He
how did he got a world title run?
He needed to be in a tag team.
The fact that he got a world title run, Scott Hall didn't, sums up how bad it was. Like, the guy was crap. Oh yeah, exactly. Pre-roids. I'm not going to deny that. Pre-roids, Steiners.
Roids fucked him up. That was the worst thing he could have done. Because once he was on roids, he just...
It was after roids when it was after he took roids, he was made a singles competitor. And that's when it went to shit.
Oh, he couldn't fucking move.
Yeah.
He was like this and he couldn't fucking move.
I don't know what his obsession was, because he was already naturally well built. Like, he was a natural athlete. He was good enough. But yeah, honest to God, I thought it was awful. Like, after that. The beginning, I agree with Andrew at the very beginning. But obviously, that's a different topic in our time when it comes to discussing when we discuss great tag teams. That will be a future show down the line. But because of that, honestly, I was done. Like, I was just done with him. I just disregarded him. He was definitely great on the mic. I agree. I'm just going to give my quick 5 as well. So obviously, you've given some great lists. Andrew's given a great list. I'm just going to go. I'll just go from descending order. So I'll just do 1 to 5 quickly. I've got the AWA match as well. Hall and Hennig versus Garvin Regal, etc. Number 2, I've got the first WrestleMania ladder match between him and Michaels. Then I've got the King of the Ring match over the Royal Rumble. I love the Royal Rumble match, but I thought the King of the Ring was better. Number 4, I have Sting versus Hall at Uncensored, because it was the involvement of Dusty Rhodes made it an even better match, because that was his hero, his mentor. And number 5 for me, Scott Hall versus Rick Martell, 1986 for the AWA World Title.
I'll say that was number 6 or 7 for me. I was really close.
I had it in the top 5 purely for that sense. I always liked the 1-2-3 Kid feud, but these matches I thought had more to it. But in terms of a storyline perspective, 1-2-3 Kid's in the top 3 for feuds. But that's my 5, 1 to 5 in terms of that work. That's just how I view it. But Martell's definitely underrated. Rick the Body Martell was so underrated. Very good AWA champion. Very good. I want to ask you, Connor, because obviously you know me. In terms of these shows, we've done a few quizzes.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you. I'm going to ask you some very interesting questions. And I want to see if you could answer them. So we're going to go through just a couple of questions, all right? And this is just part of the show. Anybody else wants to get involved, just let me know, and you can by all means get involved. Just I get the correct year, so I don't want to screw this one up. Yep. So Survivor Series, there was the teams of the Bad Guys and the Teamsters. Can you name any of the team that was involved for Scott Hall? So Scott Hall was captain of the Bad Guys. Can you name anybody in his lineup?
And what year was that?
1994, 95. I think it's 1990. Yeah, it's 1995. Yeah, 1995. Yeah.
I feel like the easiest one to just off the bat guess is I'm going to guess the 1-2-3 Kid.
Yep, 1-2-3 Kid was on his team. So you only need to name 2 more, because it was 5-on-5 back then. This is when they started to do five-man teams at Survivor Series.
I faintly recall. I know he did. I feel like he didn't do many matches with this tag team. I know he did a pay-per-view with them. I'm hoping it's Survivor Series. Is it the Head Shrinkers?
Correct. So you've named 1, 2, 3 Kid. You've named the Head Shrinkers. That's free. Can you name the final man in the team? And I will confirm, because I know you're not looking at the chat, but I can confirm Andrew has named the final teammate.
Oh, son of a bitch. Okay.
If you want a clue, you can ask for a clue.
Yeah, I'll take one clue since I've gotten the first 3.
Okay. Your final clue is this man main evented one of the big 4 as it was back then. Now it's the big 5. He main evented one of the big 4 at a football stadium. And he main evented at a football stadium in 1992. It's still regarded as one of the best matches that wasn't for a world title.
Oh, so 92. It was 92. Which pay-per-view was it?
One of the big 4.
Because I haven't generally.
So it wasn't for the world title, but it was for the Intercontinental title that this man main evented in.
Oh, okay. Yep. Davey Boy Smith.
Bingo. And yes, Andrew was against Shawn Michaels and Diesel. Michaels and Diesel were the captains of the Teamsters.
Yeah,
Okay,
and he was with another one of the. He was with one of the guys from the Bret Hart's
Yep.
Wasn't he with Natalia's dad?
Yep. Neidhart, Owen Hart, and Jeff Jarrett were on the Teamsters.
Yeah, I'll
admit that's the perfect. I won't deny. I actually think that's the perfect team.
That's a brilliant team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm now going to ask you another question. This is where I think you may like this one. You know what? I think you will like this one.
All right.
At Halloween Havoc in 1997, he fought Lex Luger in a grudge match, winning by submission. But can you name the guest referee who usually would be on commentary? Can you name the guest referee of Hall versus Luger from Halloween Havoc 1997? And the big clue there was, at the time, he was heavily on commentary for WCW. Andrew, that is correct. That is the correct answer, Andrew. That is the correct answer. One of my favorite matches, funnily enough, from the whole of 1997 was this one. And I recommend watching it.
I faintly remember this match. I just, for the life of me, cannot remember the guest referee. And I hate it because I know it was somebody huge at the time. That was he wasn't a wrestler, but like you said, he was a huge. Fuck.
At that point in time, he was a retired pro wrestler.
He had one of those fucking hard ass names to pronounce too. Because I hate saying his name because I always fuck it up.
I tell you what, if you can't pronounce his second name, I'll let you just give the first name. If you can't go with the second name, I'll let you have the first. And yep, it was the undercard of Piper Hogan in the steel cage.
Okay. I'll just say his first name and last initial, Larry Z.
Yep, Larry Zbyszko. Correct.
I can't see. Thank you, because I can't pronounce that name.
You're very welcome. Let's see. Yep. So here we go. As I mentioned earlier on, he won the United States title on 2 occasions. But on the second occasion, who did he defeat at Super Brawl in 1999 to win the US title?
99 to win the US title.
Who did he defeat to begin his second reign? Unfortunately, he then got injured shortly after, so his title reign was.
I hate thinking about this match. As a Scotsman, I hate thinking about this match. And I hate that you've done this to me because I have to admit this. My favorite wrestler of that era is Roddy Piper. and I hate that you've done this to me because that's actually my favorite wrestler of that era is Roddy Piper.
I had to ask. Not purely because I hate Roddy Piper, I don't. I had to ask purely for that circumstance. Hello, Rich. Good to see you. A lot of 90s WWF stars dead now. Hardly any live that long. That's true. True fact. Many pro wrestlers died by the age of 45. Many of them die by the age of 45. It's just purely because of how much of an impact the sport takes out of you. It has such a significant impact, and that says all really about how crazy it is. Okay. I'm going to ask you...
I hate you for that. I hate talking about that match.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to like this final question, though.
I know I won't.
You're not going to like it. In 2002...
Okay.
Scott Hall would wrestle his first match on Raw since 96. But who did he defeat on his first match back?
I think of breaks. I remember. I fucking decimated him. Was it the third Dudley brother?
Can you name him?
His name is Spike, and it might as well. He probably got the name from that match because he got spiked into the ground over and over again during that match.
That is absolutely correct. It is Spike Dudley. He massacred him.
He fucking bounced up the ground about 15 times.
But obviously, yeah. It's just sheer carnage.
They literally let me here, welcome back. Here, now you get to kill this man.
It's not really a myth, Andrew. It is a fact that's been done studying that the average pro wrestler does die before the age of 45. And it's purely because of the lifestyle. It's nothing to do with drugs. It's not drug related.
It's purely the lifestyle that they're on.
Yeah. The only good thing now is it's better nowadays. It's so much better nowadays, but it's not purely drug related. It used to be before drug testing got involved, but nowadays
I think it's more the drinking. I think it's more the drinking than the drugs. They drank so heavily while still having honestly one of the shittiest lifestyles when it came to traveling and everything like that.
Definitely. For me, favorite 90s wrestler is either Bret Hart, Undertaker, or Sting. But I always have a thing for Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect.
And I'm going to continue to say what I said earlier, and that's
him.
It's one of my top three one of my top three all time. Roddy Piper. I just I mean, you have to be good on the mic to get your own show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was brilliant inside the ring. Oh my gosh, when he passed away, that's why I hold such contempt against Ronda Rousey for her whole thing. Because I cried when Rowdy passed away. I was absolutely devastated when he passed away. So I just don't like his gimmick being done again by someone who I don't feel deserves to even attempt to do it.
I don't see anything particularly wrong with her using the Rowdy part, because obviously she did do it in UFC as well. Like, she is a big Roddy Piper fan. She did meet him.
Yeah.
Paid honor to him. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do see what you mean, though. Like, I have a personal issue with Becky Lynch copying The Rock's gimmick. That's why I didn't like Christian for a while, because he copied The Rock's gimmick in 2003.
Yeah.
But I still recognize their work. But I get what you mean. I cannot stand the fact they copied everything about him, like the gimmicks, catchphrases, the finishing move. I was like, get something else, you original clown. Piper's Pit, what a show. It was as good as Dallas. Yeah.
I think it's more stems from the fact that he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time that I can't stand it.
Mm-hmm. If you had to put Scott Hall in a bracket of top 10, or even, you never know nowadays because of top 20, would you put him as his finishing moves? Literally. Finishing moves and like the whole big time gimmick is literally based off The Rock.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. That's one thing that pisses me off. Rowdy Piper was known for his mic ability, and you gave his fucking gimmick to some UFC that can't speak.
Yeah, she now calls it the manhandle slam. She isn't slamming men, so she hasn't got the right to it. I know, but remember, Rowdy wasn't for that sense, though. He was rowdy for his wacky ability outside the ring. Not for when he was talking. It was the bits he done in between. That's why he's got that nickname. That's why she's got the moniker Rowdy Ronda Rousey. It's purely in that respect as well. But mic ability-wise, a turnip can do better than Rousey. A turnip is more entertaining. But just going back to my question, I want to get the guys in the live chat's comments as well, because I know I've got a personal point of view and a personal opinion. I know you guys have as well, but out of wrestlers that never won the world title, so we're going to exclude Taker, we're going to exclude Macho Man, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, John Cena, Hogan, Macho Man, the Iron Sheik. We're going to exclude all of them, right? But individuals that haven't won a world title, like Piper, Regal, Perfect, all those guys that didn't win a world title, unfairly, but it's the truth.
Completely.
In terms of ranking, where would you rank Scott Hall in terms of the greatest to never win a world title?
I think part of me has to bring in longevity for longevity's sake. I have to put him probably number. He's in my top 3. I think it's him, Piper, and Hennig, Mr. Perfect, that are my top 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put Hall 1 purely because he was around for so long. They had so many opportunities to give him the belt. It wasn't like Piper where he kind of was just overshadowed by the fact that there were so many good wrestlers that were more over than him. And there wasn't really a lot of opportunities to give Roddy Piper the belt. It was a lot easier to do a lot of other stuff with him, but give him the belt. Mr. Perfect kind of had his own thing that he kind of did. It's kind of like the $1 Million Man. You couldn't really put the $1 Million Man as someone to get the belt because he created his own belt.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to put Hall 1 purely because they had so much time to give it to him. They had so many opportunities to do it, and they just never did.
I'm just saying he's not top 20 in his opinion, which is fair. He's going Hennig, DiBiase, Piper, Jake, Regal, Cesaro above him.
I wouldn't put Cesaro above him. I love everybody he's named. I would put him above Regal for sure.
Piper didn't need to win the world title as he was already world class and a showman. That's all that matters. He was the people's champ. Yeah, I agree. I think you could put I think it was right to put mid card and tag titles on them. But I do agree about world title. And Mr. Perfect was world class at chewing gum. I'm annoyed that he didn't get a world title, and I'm going to say
I'm annoyed that a lot of the people didn't get it.
He should have beat Hogan in '91. I know people saying it should, like, Taker's title run was unfortunate. I agree, but Mr. Perfect, after he lost to Bret Hart, after he went over, I know he had issues with his back, and you wouldn't see him wrestle again for some time. If he hadn't had those issues, I think personally he should have beat Hogan after SummerSlam in '91 because he deserved that world title run that he never got. And it's absolutely disgusting. Scott Hall, I think he would have been great as in that sense. I don't know why Jake never got a world title run either, Andrew. I agree. But yeah, I suppose Henry's biggest problem, promos. But
I mean, you could say they're not reliable. You could say they're not reliable, but you could have at least. I think
given a chance.
If you give him exactly, they didn't give him a chance, and two, it wasn't like you had to give him this big, fat, long run.
Mm-hmm. The good thing about Hennig though is he didn't need. I think for Hennig though is he should have. If you can't do a promo, then just give it to Bobby Heenan. He would have won a world title if they'd actually respected that work a bit more. Yeah. But Scott Hall, I had to ask the question because obviously in terms of listing it, it was a manner of asking, manner of circumstance. I do, however, have to note that very shortly, as we are wrapping up in the next couple of minutes.
Yep.
Keen will be live with Phil Brown. He will be doing their show tonight live at 8:00 on the Armchair. I know Keen will be looking forward to that with Phil.
As we slide over to
No, we won't be talking about that. It's purely on the sense of giving some respect to Keen's show, which is live at 8:00 with Phil Brown. And just before we go, does anybody have any lasting questions? Anybody have anything that they want to mention? I'll bring them up on screen. In the sense, of course, we'll certainly bring up, certainly answer them as much as we can. Andrew's comment, when Kurt was less bound to the perfect gimmick later on, his promos were decent. Yeah, when he was just Kurt Hennig. When he was just himself in WCW, his promos with Dallas Page were fantastic. He was just told to get over the perfect shit.
I think some people, their biggest problems were always that they had honestly one of the worst gimmicks for cutting promos. Mm-hmm. You know, there are some gimmicks that you get, and it makes there's sometimes when you get a gimmick, and it makes it like near impossible to cut a promo because of you having the character that you have to imitate and play. There's no way to make it look good, promo wise. Mm-hmm. And it unfortunately happened with a lot of people.
Brilliant comment, Trevor, again. Andrew's comment, the Scott Hall passing DDP needs some recognition.
DDP is one of the greatest, has probably, for me, one of the greatest post-wrestling careers of anybody I've ever seen. His ability to do what he's done.
His comments are all fantastic.
He looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's kept himself in perfect shape. He looks even better than he did at some points in his wrestling career.
Oh yeah.
He looks like he could still go. The thing is, he's one of the, you hear wrestlers who come out of retirement for just a couple, like we with the whole Stone Cold Steve Austin coming back for a match against him. If I heard DDP was coming back for a run in the WWE where he was actually going to wrestle week in, week out, I would believe it and perfectly think that he could pull it off because of how good a shape he's in right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just something about him. Even if it was a couple of minute match and he just dropped a diamond cutter, I wouldn't care. It'd be quality.
His diamond cutter.
That's what he is.
The diamond cutter, I will always be thankful for because I think the RKO is one of the greatest finishers. And I don't think it happens without the diamond cutter.
Nah, it doesn't. It doesn't. Purely because it's the innovation of the movement and adding to it.
But he's RKO's top 10 finishers for me. I know that's kind of probably a heavily debated comment. Ric Flair is the exact opposite. Ric Flair looked like he was 20 years past his prime, 10 years in.
He looked so bad after the Royal Rumble that he won. He looked so bad. Oh my gosh. He looked so bad.
He looked terrible. One of the times that I was like, oh my gosh, he does not look good, was when he lost to Shawn Michaels in the career versus career match. When he's like getting up and stumbling, I'm like, oh my God, he looks like he just, like you're putting down a wounded animal because he just looked so bad. Like, I love Ric Flair. It looked
Same here. And before we go, I just want to bring one thing up on screen for everybody to see that I think we all deserve, and that's this. Say hello to the bad guy. And I just want to take a little survey. Did anybody like the show tonight? Did anybody like the show tonight?
I fucking
I
hated
certainly
it.
He was mad. He was mad. So many hours. I don't know what it was about him. He just loved to wrestle. But
he's one of those guys who was in it purely
longevity.
He was purely in it for the game. He purely was in it for just loving what he did. You know, there's some wrestlers who you could tell they're kind of in it for the money, or they're in it just because, you know, of the fame that they get from it.
And on that note,
let's end it here.
Andrew says yes. I'll take that as a quality response. Tonight, the weekly Steelchair podcast pays tribute to Scott Hall. We bless you. We honor you. Rest in peace. Oozing machismo. Good night, folks. See you next week for another tribute. I wonder who will be conversation. Stay tuned.